I'm going to go ahead and bring back my casters.
Let's
I've
go,
got
Spencer.
Joshi and Magical. Yeah, I love talking to Chad. He's always so
He's a good
wholesome,
kid.
but as well as not afraid to spit a little fire there, Magical.
Hey,
You can always
that's
appreciate
revenge
that.
from the last time you talked smack on him. I think it's well deserved. Like he definitely has that position to kind of throw some back, right? Make sure that he's getting some trash talk in there, and it makes me more excited for tomorrow's matchup against. Because I think that Immortals face Dignitas tomorrow.
Yeah, we definitely see a lot of trash talk coming through from all of the different junglers, and I feel like it's really bringing a lot of life into the academy scene is when the players are willing to, like, just throw stuff at each other. I know that there are some teams that are not allowed to trash talk. They are prevented from doing so.
We did
by
find
their
that out
staff.
last
But for those of you who can, just keep it coming, man. This is what we do.
Those of you who can do.
I don't know why this just reminded me. I did want to say one thing because Chad was talking about Pretty getting 14 kills this game, and so I looked it up really quickly. So 14 kills was actually the record set in spring, set by 6A.
Oh.
And then in this split, we've already seen now he's the third player. So he's tied for first 3 ways with himself, Shaden, and Takeover, all having 14 kills.
We have some pop-off games here in the
By the way,
durability patch.
that means two of the...
But did they go 14-0 in 14?
I'd have to look that up, but I will say that it does
I feel
mean
like that's
that
a lot more impressive.
2 of the 3 records were set on Talia.
Yep.
Yeah,
Not
well, hey,
a not a
that
huge
works out.
surprise. The champion is
Not
just
a-
like able to play so much and actually does like crazy DPS as long as you're able to take these like running fights that we have been seeing Pretty have so much
Yeah.
success with. So it's a champion that kind of does a little bit of everything. We'll see how much
does?
more it encroaches
Okay,
onto the rest of the
I got it for you. I got it for you. So Shaden went 14, 3, and 9. Takeover, he
So
was
not
on
a 0.
but he was on a Takeover was on a collie. So keep this in mind. He was 14, 1, and 8.
I'm no
Other
big
than Death
brain
Wish.
analyst, but a 1 and a 0 are different things. I think.
Ooh.
I don't know.
We'll see if we can get a second opinion on
I'm not-
that.
I hope
Computer?
we do. I hope we do. We got TSM Academy versus Team Liquid Academy coming up next, and it will be a very tough tilt between the two. I know this is what I've been very, very excited about. Team Liquid Academy themselves having a running start to the split, and especially coming into this one, right? It's an interesting conversation to chat about the roster, Joshi.
Yeah, we know Team Liquid is super, super strong, but we did see that there are some rosters that have been able to challenge them. CLG with
has.
Luger and as well as Cloud9, now they have King and Destiny back, are showing that Team Liquid are mortal. But that said, they have had some really strong speed runs that we know that they are currently the team to beat, and it's largely on them whether or not they will actually find success. And this is some footage that we have from their speed run, 1837. Team
This
Liquid
was insane.
absolutely slaughtering Immortals, and funnily enough, in the same week, Team Liquid LCS, perfect game to Immortals LCS.
Right. Team Liquid just across the board was popping off that week. They were doing a great job. Also, I will say this, that if I see Yon on Seri, I'm going to shame the team. Because, oh my god, please do not let Yon play this champion. He is too good at playing Seri.
Yeah,
Really
I
does.
think Zeri itself is just terrifying in its own right, but as we all see and know, Jan himself is a bit terrifying on the champion. I know it's always memed about like the first videos that came out about Zeri, and when she really didn't do much but still looked kind of cool. We'll see if he can kind of do that this time around, but if it actually looks good and does something, because it definitely does. But on the other side, you've got TSM Academy, and I think this roster itself has had such an interesting path, but also trajectory coming into this
Yeah.
one, Magical.
Well, Josh, dude, I feel like Josh had something to say. Sorry. What was that?
No, I was just gonna say, I mean, we set Team Liquid up as kind of like the big bad boys. TSM are kind of like the scrappy new kids on the block. You got a lot of new players here, right? Shenyi's come back, Instinct and Takeover are still here, and Hyper, he's actually been looking so much better. But the big new person on the block, Soul, might actually be able to challenge Badly.
Yeah, but then I also look like, yeah, Soul I'm really excited about. He's a good kid as well. Been able to talk to him for a couple of content pieces. But we have to like shift our focus back to Takeover. This guy played in the LCS, even if he's subbed in, he still looked pretty good in the LCS, and he's been looking great. I talked about how he is now one of 3 that have tied for the kill record, and it was on a collie, a really impactful champion, especially if you're able to pilot it that well. And we've seen that Takeover is absolutely nuts with how he's been able to play so far in this split. Maybe it's a little bit of the hyper factor, maybe it's Soul, but whatever it is, Takeover is in a position where he can make an argument easily that he deserves to get that spot back in the LCS.
Now, I will agree with you, Magical, but I will put a caveat on that. Takeover is absolutely deserving LCS on Akali. He's absolutely deserving LCS on Sylas.
What about I was going to say, what about Sylas?
On Sylas.
Yasuo looked good too.
Yasuo had some good moments, but it's definitely a situation where on these champions, he kind of reminds me of Summit, right? Summit was potentially the best top laner in LCS on Jace, potentially the best top laner in LCS on Gnar. But you take them off those champions, are they still ready? That's my challenge to Takeover. What can you do when you don't have good matchups on these champions? Can you still prove that you're going to outlane Harry, who has been perennially the strongest laner that we've had in Academy?
I think that's the most interesting thing, but also when you look at those clips, right, it's not always a fancy finish. It's not always the glittering finish to these plays, right? And it shows that there is still some of that growth, and I love that Takeover is willing to take those chances. I guess that we'll see as you guys are about to take it away. Champion Select is ready to go, so let's see what happens.
All right, that was quick. Let's get into it. I'm ready for the second series. We'll talk to Lennon after the break, hopefully for another halftime show, but getting into this pick and ban, looking at how Team Liquid Honda are going to face off against TSM Academy. I'm really curious to see if they continue to focus this pressure onto Hyper. The Lee Sin is pretty much permanently banned against TSM. You cannot let Hyper have that, but I'm also looking towards like the Wukongs and how he was able to pilot the Viegos as of late.
Yeah, I mean, he's another specialist, right? He's basically the only person playing Lee Sin right now, but it is going to be really important to kind of keep track of what the win conditions are coming from TSM. We've already painted Takeover. If he gets onto Akali, if he gets onto Sylas, and he finds some good matchups here, he can definitely perform as a top LCS talent. But when he's not on those champions, he's not been having the same kind of success, and he hasn't been playing them a whole lot thus far. He's played Ahri, Azir, Corki more than he's played either the Akali or the Sylas, and so if Harry can like push Takeover into these Control Mages matchups, I feel like that's a natural way for Team Liquid to just kind of handshake the mid lane and be very happy with the way that the rest of the map should play out.
That's fair. And the fair assessment is, and I'm actually kind of curious with like having the fair shakeup of the mid matchup for Hyper and Takeover. Now that they've had some points pinched a little bit, seeing both the Lee Sin and Diana ban, but on the side of TSM, they didn't opt to focus on the bottom side, onto that mid jungle duo. Instead, they focused on the bottom side, and Instinct immediately grabs himself that Zeri.
This is interesting, right? Because the Karma ban is kind of a soft ban on the Ezreal as well. Yon should be willing to play it anyway. He's done it in partnerships that aren't with the Karma, but this is something that we know, right? Yon has been an Ezreal specialist so far during the split. He's put 7 games on it already, and as the Wukong looks like it is going to get locked in, he will now have to play it without the Karma. But I feel like this is one way for TSM to attack Team Liquid, right? Yon, with how aggressive he's been playing, he's typically been coming out ahead. He's been playing most of the all-in and the aggression very well, but sometimes he implodes, right? That's the kind of thing. When you are constantly playing on the knife's edge, it is up to you whether or not you fall on one side of the knife or you actually get back to safety. And Yon, like, he's usually coming out ahead, but if TSM with Instinct and Shen Yi can punish the aggression from Yon, then Instinct and Shen Yi will take over the team fights later.
Well, to me, it depends on what Shen Yi wants to play into the spot lane. You've got Zeri. Do you go for the Yuumi, more of the buffing up Instinct, really letting him take the lead in this matchup? Or do you try to go for something that might be able to set up yourself a bit more? And then we also have to look at the jungles. We already have the Wukong picked up for Armeo. Volibear is being hovered, and if it gets locked in, that would actually be a change of pace for Hyper. He's only played 4 champions this split so far: Wukong, Lee Sin, Diana, and Viego. But instead, he's pivoting over to this Volibear for the first time this split.
Yeah, we know that this is something that was very popular in spring. We know he can play it, but the big question for me is how is he going to be able to play alongside Soul? Because the other win condition we've touched on, Takeover. If he gets onto one of his best champions, it can be very difficult for Harry to play.
Whoa!
But, we'll get back to the Sona, but I really want to focus on the Volibear real quick because we've seen Team Liquid, one of the ways that they've crumbled is when players like Darshan or Dokla in the past have just dunked on Bradley. They just go top lane and he does not get to play. Soul is a player that is potentially strong enough to benefit from all that attention, and so Hyper can choose to attack the top lane as well. But you look like you're ready to talk about the Sona. Let's talk about the Maven.
I mean, I'm just more baffled by the Sona. We have not really seen any priority on it. And Shen Yi just yesterday had played the Maokai bot lane. I think it was paired up with Senna as well. A different change. Really trying to have that adaptation. It's going into the style that we were talking about, how each one of these players seems to have their own champion pool they feel comfortable taking in this meta. And Sona is someone who's normally been known in the past to be extremely squishy. With their ability, is not necessarily as susceptible as she once was.
Yeah, it's definitely a champion that we know has been very strong in solo queue for a long time. You just have so much ability to scale into the game. But as you said, you know, even with the durability patch, Sona is attackable early on. Armeo can choose to come down here, and while she is tankier, she's still one of the squishiest champions on the patch in the entire game. And so Team Liquid have a very clear target. They know that if Zeri plus Sona can get into these later game team fights without coming in from a deficit, TSM can win those incredibly hard. So Team Liquid, they're opting in to taking some really good champions that have great target select during these fights.
So now I'm looking at TSM, and I'm also kind of considering whether or not they really want to full in onto the scaling aspect of their team. Zeri, Sona, even Volibear, pretty good late game scalers. Corki has been something TakeOver has been playing a lot as of late, but do you really want to play that against Harry's Ahri? That's the big question here.
I think you should opt into it, right? As TSM, you're looking for as many win conditions as you can possibly find. In this Tristana, we saw it used to great effect yesterday by King and Destiny.
Yeah.
And if you're looking for something that can punish Zeri and Sona early on in the game, Tristana does that. But neither Zeri nor Sona have any damage to start.
But wasn't the Tristana paired with Yuumi to give a little bit more of the survivability as well as a good chase down potential?
It was.
So that's why, we don't actually get that at all. Instead, Sivir picked up for Yon. I think that's the first Sivir we've had of this year.
I'd have to double check. Yeah, Sivir has not been particularly popular recently. It gives them a lot of tools to be aggressive as a team, but it doesn't necessarily set up Yon to be as aggressive. And so this feels like a very different version of what Team Liquid is looking to play. And as the LeBlanc gets locked in, it is a skill matchup that is slightly LeBlanc favored. You do have a little bit more range to play with Ethereal Chains, but this is a different version of Team Liquid. I wonder if that's a shaking of Yon's confidence, or he's just so confident that he feels he can play aggressively on champions that you don't normally think of.
Also, so I did just quickly look it up on my other monitor. Luger did play this recently against Golden Guardians and did get a victory, even though his scoreline wasn't necessarily the greatest. It is interesting to see that they're opting in for this. And you talked about the karma, the synergy it has with Wukong, allowing it to get really fast into the fights. Sivir essentially does the same thing to try to facilitate the movement speed of both Harry and Armeo into these fights.
Yeah. And so we're seeing a very interesting breakdown of both compositions already, right? TSM, they have a very straightforward front to back with a LeBlanc kind of tacked on, right? And TakeOver can look on the sides, and the Nasus coming through.
Oh,
okay.
All
right. Well, that has to go top lane, right? So this is a matchup that we haven't been looking at a whole lot because nobody's playing Nasus.
No.
But this is actually a matchup that Orin can win, right? This Nasus is not really a strong lane counter pick. It is okay in the lane. It should be able to survive. But the reason why you're picking this is to use the Wither on Zeri and put the Q for Zeri, what's normally like a half second to a maybe 1 second cooldown, on a 4 second cooldown.
Yeah, because that's one thing that's why we saw Nasus support be a thing for a while, when Zeri was at the of what we've seen from her, where she was pretty much perma-pick or ban. She's starting to get that again now, but it was mostly support Nasus in the bot lane to make sure that you could constantly make sure the Zeri did not feel comfortable at all.
Yeah, and I want to dispel a very common misconception about Nasus right now. Nasus is not a scaling character. Nasus is garbage at 3 items and beyond. Until you are at a spot where your Q can actually one-shot the carry, it's not useful, right? Nasus is going to be really, really strong in the mid game, and as a whole team, you're looking at Ahri, who's looking to play at 1 item. You have Nasus, who's looking to play at 1 item. You have Wukong, who's looking to play at 1 item. And so Team Liquid, they're really playing for this early mid game. Look at Dragons 2 and 3, where they were going to try and take over the game, and if they don't, they are going to get outscaled.
I was about to say, an Ornn, LeBlanc, Zeri, Sona, and Volibear, that is a lot of scaling on their side. Have the ornaments that can be dished out by Soul. Also, we've seen Soul put up some amazing performances on Ornn. I think there's a tweet by him recently where he learned a little trick by watching LCK where you can flash forward on Ornn in the middle of the Call of the Forge God to get the extra distance and catch people off guard with the knockup.
Yeah, it's very funny. Like, there's a lot of little things on Ornn, but we will see how well he's able to pilot this. This is a decent matchup for him.
Yeah, it is, and we only can find out one way, as usual. That is getting onto the Rift for our second best of 2 of the second day of Week 3. TSM Academy, Team Liquid Honda Academy. One looking for mid-game fights, the other looking to outscale.
So now Team Liquid, they have a lot of pressure put on them, right? We see Bradley going with the Unsealed Spellbook. He wants to actually be able to fight, and so while the other lanes I feel are unlikely to really turn into a whole lot, as we see both top laners dancing up here in the top lane, the big thing that I'm going to be paying attention to is if either one of these guys can get a freeze. Because if Bradley can get a freeze towards his side of the lane, he is incredibly safe, he can stack up, and his mid lane spike is incredibly difficult to deal with. If he can't, if he's stuck trying to bounce waves with Soul, then Bradley becomes very sad.
Wait, zone attack of Soul, yeah, just dance, let's go, dance party top lane.
Okay, there they go.
Respect, absolute respect to both of these top laners.
Yeah, and just so everybody knows, there is all chat. They can, trash talk back and forth in it. We just can't see it, but that's the kind of thing where I feel like Soul's like, truce.
Yeah. Oh, I would totally be the same. I'd be like, no, dance party, come on.
Yeah, Alex is a funny guy, right? You'll get to see after this game. I did a pro review with him, and he's got a lot to say. He's a very intelligent young guy, and I can't wait to see what he does on this matchup. I can't imagine he's particularly familiar with it, because who plays Nasus?
Right, not too many people play Nasus, especially top lane. Like, support Nasus actually seems like it's more reliable than the top lane matchup nowadays. But here, bot lane, Instinct and Shenyi, they helped out a bit on the clear, but you can tell, even though the durability patches here, like you were kind of talking about, Sona is pretty susceptible. She has a very low health bar at the very beginning of the game.
Yep, and look at that.
Woo!
2 Qs and an E, and Shen Yi is down to a third of his maximum HP. This is a tough spot, and Yan and Ayla, they've been very, very aggressive historically, and the teleport coming through from Yan, as well as the Dark Harvest, says it's probably going to be lethality. So it is a situation where Team Liquid, they're opting in to this kind of gameplay. They are trying to play around 1 and 2 items. They need to find advantages there, because we already said they were going to get outscaled. It's going to get even worse if Yan can't do any damage to Soul.
I like how TSM have been playing these lanes as well. Looking to get those advantages in both solo lanes, top lane, Soul. Understanding that power that you have against the Nasus. The only problem is with this wave being frozen. Kind of would like to crash in the mini wave, especially with the cannon being there. But Soul's pretty fine for a while. Same with mid lane. Look at how far Takeover's been able to push back Harry.
Yeah. And this is the crux, right? Soul already got this wave to push in. It is now crashing, so Bradley will not be able to establish a freeze here. And so Soul playing the first couple of waves quite well, finding himself a small lead. And we said this matchup is pretty decent for Ornn. It remains pretty good until around like level 7 or 8, when Bradley has enough points in his queue, he has enough stacks that he can just lifesteal through a lot of what Soul is able to put out.
Well, now we turn our attention to the bot lane. Looks like the first plate will be picked up by Yan and Ayla. This is not looking pretty so far for Instinct and Shenyi. They had this plan going into it, but who would have suspected a Sivir pickup for the side of Yan?
Yep, Armeo, I don't know if he spotted the fact that he was on a ward, got cleared there. He wants to make sure that Harry can get this wave in, make sure he gets the crash, and as Harry does so...
Oh, the flash coming in with the ethereal chains onto Harry, and look who's here, Hyper flashing in as well for the lightning crash on top of TL's mid lane.
There you go. That's one way to find an advantage. If Takeover just willing to flash forward for the ethereal chains, catching everyone, but now Shen Yi, he's very far forward.
He's very far forward, trying to heal up the best he can. Actually, has been doing a good job. Wasted a lot of mana to do so. But we'll be able to battle back against Yan and Ayla, who had been shoving Instinct and Shenyi underneath their turret for this entire game thus far.
Yeah. Okay, so TSM, so far, they're playing this early game pretty decently, right?
I like it.
Seeing that Armeo is here, they are still
Oh,
not afraid
barely.
to Takeover down a level, and still willing to flash forward with Hyper on the sides. This is the kind of confidence that we know Takeover can have. We know that in these good matchups, he can take total control.
Well, I think it's also Takeover on more of these assassin-type champions. He's always so great at utilizing that low range to his advantage, catching people off guard, diving in when people wouldn't ever suspect that you would.
Yeah. That's the kind of thing that Takeover is so good at. It's why the Akali is strong. It's why the Sylas is a good pick for him. And we constantly pride Harry as one of the best laners that we have in Academy, constantly coming out ahead in these matchups, even when they're not supposed to be good. But now he's getting put behind by Takeover to start in what is a difficult matchup for the Ahri throughout the entire game. And to make it a little bit worse, Yan and Ayla, despite the fact that they were constantly chunking out Shen Yi, he was able to heal up quite a bit through it. He's no longer under the same absolutely brutal threat of the early game Sivir.
But keep in mind that Yan and Ayla did go back. They based to make sure they can pick up a Tear of the Goddess pretty early for Yan. Well, actually, I think he had that beforehand. And now they got a Tear of the Goddess on the other side for Shen Yi. So it's kind of counteracted a bit, while there's still being more poke from Yan and Ayla at this moment. So I expect that now that they've gotten some of these components, they're going to look to try to see if they can maintain this pressure. But Instinct did not want to let that happen right away. Instead, chases off Yan, who does not have Ayla.
And that's a flash coming through from Instinct, traded out for not a whole lot from Yan, but a lot of his HP. So this is feeling like TSM, they are turning up at the right time. Soul has a lead over Bradley. Bradley never able to build a freeze. Yan and Ayla not able to get more after that first play. They're kind of getting pushed around in the mid lane. All three lanes are currently winning for TSM. This is a recipe for success if I've ever seen it.
This is not at all what is expected, because Team Liquid have been that team that have been dominating the lane phase in pretty much every one of their games except for yesterday, where there was that pressure back onto them. You saw Darshan, how he was playing into Bradley, constantly getting leads, even looking at copy into Harry. All over the map, C9 were able to take these advantages, and it seems like TSM Academy have learned from Cloud9 and are looking to replicate that here in this game.
And so, we have to ask the question then, it's not often that we have to ask this, how are Team Liquid going to be coming back in this game? How are they going to be winning these fights around 1 and 2 items? Now, they are very strong. Like, we cannot understate how strong Team Liquid really are going to be during the next couple of minutes. When they get that first item done, they are incredibly disciplined. All of their champions will be doing ridiculous damage, but they are a ways away from it, right? Bradley is at a pretty significant disadvantage. Harry is going to be pushed back. He's down, an amplifying to him now, but not coming in with an advantage suddenly shakes his ability to actually make some of these plays. The fact that they get this first dragon is fantastic, because if they can get 2 and 3 when they're strong, they can start threatening for whatever soul we end up getting.
See, I was about to make the argument that where we should expect Team Liquid to thrive is, as you had just justified, in the mid game. Once they get these first items completed, it might help them out a lot. And right there, Bradley was able to thwart a dive attempted by Hyper. Even if he has level 6, it's still difficult to dive a Nasus this early when he still has his ult available, has enough mana to fight back. But I'm still looking for the the first item spikes from the side of Team Liquid. I feel like their first item spikes are a lot stronger than that of TSM's.
Yeah, we actually need to start being a little bit worried for Soul now, right? The matchup turns very heavily for a little while now that Bradley is level 7. Until he gets to about level 13, Bradley has a lot of control. And despite the fact that Soul has done a good job thus far, he needs to be worried about getting all in, like 1v1 by Bradley for the next couple of minutes. So this is when Team Liquid need to make their plays. We already see them playing for this Rift Herald, and as is tradition, Yan isn't joining.
Yan is just holding on to the bot lane with Sivir, pretty easily done. And this kind of goes into what we were talking about. Team Liquid seemed to know that even though their lanes didn't go perfectly, they were behind a bit, they still have power here in this mid game. They know the side of TSM kind of need to be able to get more items themselves to really be able to bring as much of a punch that Team Liquid can. Plus, they were the first ones on the rotation. So they get both neutral objectives, the Dragon beforehand and that Rift Herald that can start cracking open this mid game pretty wide once we get to it.
Yeah, and so the thing that I'm going to be paying attention to, right, is one of the things that we said was really good about the Team Liquid composition is their ability to select targets later on during these team fights. And while Takeover is taking this fight, he's not able to find the kill just quite yet. Ahri and Wukong can get on top of Instinct. You use the Cyclone, you guarantee the Charm, and suddenly Harry and Armeo can kill the opposing AD carry or the opposing support, and suddenly if you take out one of these major pieces of the TSM Death Ball, Team Liquid can rip apart these tanks because they're just too slow.
And at the moment, they're not that tanky, so at least they've got that working for them. When you look at the inventories, it's a Bomby's vest, a Bramble vest, and a Bomby Cinder for the side of Soul. So while Bradley probably can't really 1v1 him, that's perfectly fine, because all he has to do is clear out the minion waves, make sure the Ornn isn't, getting ahead or really having to be a part of anything. and then later on look to fight on once you get what I imagine is going to be. Is that going to be a Trinity Force?
Yeah, it's a Trinity Force. He's got the
Okay.
Heartbound Axe at this point, right? Again, this is when he gets the first item, when Nasus is on Trinity Force, or sometimes Divine Sundry, depending on the preferences of the player. They are incredibly strong. They are strong enough that he might be able to 1v2 the Ornn plus the Volley Bar. But Shenyi giving us a bit of a concert at the same time. Bradley is far enough behind that it kind of makes me wonder, like, how much has he practiced this, right? We were saying that Soul wasn't going to be able to practice this, might not be as familiar with the matchup, but so far he's accomplishing a lot of the things that we are hoping an Ornn can actually do up in this top lane.
But still, even if you don't like it, there are the stacks coming through for Bradley, sitting at 140 plus. Not
That's
too
low.
bad.
That's actually low.
I mean, it's a low, but it's better than 0. It's not the AP variant
Yes.
that we tend to see, so he should be able to knock off a couple plates now that Soul has gone back.
Yeah, definitely getting a plate here, but typically you're expecting this Nasus to be around like just under 200 right about now. So Soul actually doing a pretty darn good job preventing Bradley from stacking up. And like Nasus, as soon
good
as
charm.
Zeri is able to kite him,
Okay, this is a bit of an interesting fight back and forth
Okay.
between the two mid lanes. More surprised to see that takeover committed for the mimicked up change, looking for the fight, and even bot lane, looking for a bit of a skirmish
spell
between the
shield.
two. It was a very nice spell shield from Yawn to make sure that he was not hit by Crescendo. But still means that a lot has been burned from the side of this bot lane. Heal, Crescendo down, windows of opportunity for the side of Armeo.
yep. Oh. Okay, Bradley not committing the ghost there. I mean, that's what we're talking about, right? This is when Bradley comes online. This is when the lane matchup becomes incredibly strong. We'll see if he can catch up with some of the stacks. But Harry, looking to come bottom lane. They want to take control of this next dragon. Remember, we're not quite on one item just quite yet, but Team Liquid might still feel strong enough right about this time to really take control of this Cloud Dragon. And if they can do that, continue chaining and trying to match the scaling of TSM by finding whatever Dragon Soul we get.
One thing people always forget is how powerful Sona and how reliant Sona is on having Crescendo up. Even if you have Flash Exhaust up for yourself, you're now susceptible. You're susceptible to getting dove and killed pretty quickly, even if you flash away. She doesn't have the most mobility. Plus, she has no way to engage for her team, now is completely reliant on Hyper to be the one who could start off the fights. They have to wait until Crescendo is up, and since they popped the Rift Herald in bot lane, Team Liquid did, they can easily put that pressure back and make sure that this window of opportunity is going to be perfectly taken advantage of.
Yeah, giving as much gold as possible over to Jan, right? He's got the Muramana already completed, and now they're transitioning over towards the dragon. It looks like TSM will probably be a little bit too late to actually try and contest this objective. So Team Liquid, they're still doing a good job, right? I feel like so many times we watch games of Team Liquid, they are bang on even in like kills, but they are ahead in gold. And now, despite the fact that the gold is even, they're up a turret, they're up 2 dragons, and with a Mountain Soul potentially coming through, they can fight for that. It's one of the most valuable individual dragons.
But keep in mind, as you had talked about, TSM are more than okay with playing this game slow. They're okay with the tempo being what it's set at right now. So unless Team Liquid can turn up the heat soon, TSM will just eventually get those items, get the 2-3 item spikes that they need to overcome any sort of leads that Team Liquid might have here in the early game.
Yeah. Oh, Harry.
Ah,
that was-
takeover's fine.
That was bold. But it's the kind of thing that we are going to have to pay attention to, right? Harry down about 6 CS. This is not typical for him. I believe the last time we checked, he was looking at about a 13 CS advantage on average, but Bradley should be fine.
Bradley should be. He uses Exhaust since he has the Unsealed Spellbook traded out, but now that Hyper is showing in the top lane with Ayla right behind him, the flash coming in from Soul, trying to see if they can force out Bradley, who uses the ult to go big and massive, trying to get the damage back. Ayla's here with a hostile takeover connecting, forcing back in Hyper. They've got the damage on his Soul. Hyper's gone, and then falls the brother. Double killed by Yon, who TP'd in.
Okay, Team Liquid, the 1 item spike starting to come through. They take control, and Instinct won't be able to actually aggress onto the rest of Team Liquid. He's trying, but doesn't have enough movement speed just quite yet. Jan is able to walk on out, but that's what we said. Bradley He should be fine. He walks out. He's got so many members of Team Liquid surrounding him, and they turn that fight right when all their power spikes are coming through. And Bradley should now be uncontested in the side lane for the next several minutes. Soul did not keep Nasus down far enough to prevent the split push from coming out, and Team Liquid are in a perfect position to start setting up for Dragon 3 to pick up this next Rift Herald and to take at least 1 or 2 fights in the next 2-3 minutes in order to cement their lead.
Getting these item spikes that they need for themselves, the Trinity Force, Divine Tsundere, they've got the Everfrost, even having that Muramana, getting close to finishing off for the side of Team Liquid gives them a lot of power. And when we take a look at this replay, look at how much Bradley's able to do, how long he's able to keep this fight going.
Yeah, and Ayla coming in with the bailout, making sure that TSM don't feel comfortable overextending in order to actually pick up the kill. Well, Blanc isn't here. She has Ignite. She can't join this team fight, but everybody else can come through. Jan with the teleport is able to join and find himself a double kill. He's always normally in the bottom lane, waiting for everything else to happen and then joining later. But he is on his first item. He's ready to actually fight, and he's halfway done with his heroes.
Oh, that was a good handshake, but a nice chains onto Harry, who has to flash and Spirit Rush out of there. The bailout was on top of him. They possibly could have gone back in, but with no one really being that low on the side of TSM and 4 members showing in mid lane, actually make it 5, because all 5 are here, looking to see if they can contest this Rift Herald.
Yeah, Team Liquid, they actually might be able to take this fight if they want to go for it, right? They have a teleport coming from Bradley. He's not close to a turret.
But they don't have TP from Harry. Harry has gone back to base, so it does give it a little bit of an opportunity to the side of TSM to secure Shelly, get themselves a position to try to see if they can overcome that gold deficit they now find themselves at.
Yeah, and I like what we're seeing from Bradley. He's not over-prioritizing stacks down in the bottom lane. He is slowly pushing the wave up because he knows he needs to find as much of a lead right now as he can. He's slowly going to be hitting things, and he's caught up. Like, he's at a reasonable stat count right now, meaning he's done a quite good job over the past several minutes since we last checked in.
Ooh, oh, that was a great Everfrost takeover. Distortion's back, but look at Harry, the damage, the burn. Is it enough to pick up the kill? And it is not. Takeover barely will survive.
Okay, Harry turning things around. If he had ultimate, that would have been a dead takeover.
Yeah.
So Team Liquid coming alive when they need to, right? This is going to be another turret potentially falling up in the top lane, and they can reset. I love watching it when teams are able to do this, and Team Liquid is the best at it. They get all that they need to. They take the top lane turret, and Harry will be able to back and teleport down for the 3rd dragon. This is when things start to become really important. Team Liquid need to find a larger gold lead than 2,500 right now to actually win this game. And this is right when it's like, ugh, are they far enough ahead to guarantee this win? They have to try.
They gotta try, especially if Shen Yi's gonna overextend like that to cancel the back of Yan. He's fairly susceptible still. But at the moment, with the items, the first items completed on both sides of the map, we're starting to get to that position where TSM can just hold out a little bit longer, utilize this Rift Herald, maybe get a turret from themselves. Then they suddenly get these 2 item spikes. They start looking a lot more powerful than Team Liquid. So this means Team Liquid, they have to be looking for this play anytime.
Yeah. So watch how well Bradley's able to just like wade into the enemy team if they even take this fight at all. Harry's not committing the teleport just quite yet.
Yeah, he is. Look at that TP from Soul and from Harry with Bradley right there. All 5 members are now into the site corridor. They're flashing for it, looking for the hostile takeover that connects onto 3 members of TSM. Soul will be the first casualty. It's a killing spree for Yon. They chase down with the Cyclone, forcing out the Stormbreaker on the other side. But Shen Yi's the real target because they can burst him down. Takeover barely alive, but look at Bradley. Look at what he's doing. He is chasing down LeBlanc underneath the turret, looking for one more segment. The turret will finish off Bradley.
Even though Bradley goes down, that's what Team Liquid were looking for. They needed to take the fight, and oh no, Harry!
Oh, Harry, he found Hyper, but Hyper, he will take one back with him into the grave that he should fall to, but he's got a little bit of distance. The Sky Splitter not in time.
That's actually pretty darn good. Hyper trading back in that fight does mean that the kills end up being pretty even between the 2 teams. A Team Liquid, they find the 3rd dragon, and that is crucial.
Right.
Now, even though when we get to the next dragon, when people start having their 2nd and 3rd items completed, and TSM will have Ornn online, they will have Sona online, Team Liquid can still flip it in order to get the actual Mountain Soul. But Team Liquid, they are so good at corralling people in these fights. Look, Takeover has to book it immediately, and that means in this 4v5, they can catch catch people trying to exit through the choke point, and the most tanky member is the first one to go down. And as Soul falls, there is no longer a front line for TSM to play around, right? Mayo catches multiple people, and the only thing that prevents this play from being a total blowout from Team Liquid is the fact that they go a little bit too far.
Yeah, and we're seeing one of the weaknesses of Nasus, how easy it is to kite out. You can make sure that you just wait it out for a long time, get the chains, get the roots. So Team Liquid, I mean, granted, they end up losing too because they lose Harry here as well. They still gain themselves the soul point potential. They don't even lose the mid-tier 1 turret where that got the crash in from Shelly.
Yeah, and I think it's absolutely crazy that this game is still, like, not decided.
Right.
The fact that Team Liquid are up 4,000 gold and are Team Liquid and have 3 dragons is maybe not enough. LeBlanc is scaling, Ornn is scaling, and the Sona, who hasn't necessarily been having the greatest game, is still scaling. The ores this champion provides are absolutely bonkers, and as Harry tries to find an assassination and the turret goes down, we are seeing Team Liquid take a little bit more control, but they're in a race against Nasus falling off.
Well, I think that's the reason why they're getting this control. This is when they should feel the most powerful. This is when they have those advantages before these items are completed by TSM. And look at how close TSM are to completing some of them. They only have one more back until they can get that Void Staff for takeover. They've got what I'm assuming is going to be a Phantom Dancer for the side of Instinct nearly completed. Oh, and Yawn, wait a minute. That's a Prowler's Claw.
Yup. Got a lot of damage. It's like a pseudo escape, but the big thing is he's just trying to get as much lethality and armor pen as he can. And, you know, the Serylda is going to be coming out next as well, right? So he's got a lot of damage. He will still do damage to Soul for a while until Soul, like, really starts ramping up with his extra Ornn items and the extra tankiness he gets every time he crafts one. But it is still a situation where we are going to ask how are Team Liquid going to deal with Ornn, and I present to you the answer, they're not. They're going to kill everyone else.
Okay, that makes sense, because I'm like, looking at that Prowler's Claw, I'm like, yeah, I get that, the lethality and all, but then you have to worry about Volibear and Ornn, who can just sit in front and tank all the damage because you're not going to be able to get through their resistances. And that's why I was expecting more like the Eclipse to be the build, but I get your point that really they aren't even the important members. Taking down Instinct, Takeover, and Shen Yi will mean, even if Soul and Hyper survive, the rest of his team can make sure they make quick work of the tanks.
Yeah, Bradley looking at takeover. Here's the Ghost Wither.
Ghost Wither, distortion away. Can he juke him? Oh, Bradley was getting baited by that. I don't even know if he got baited by it or it was just the fact that he doesn't have that much vision and saw that Sona was on his way.
Yeah, Angry Bee. Bzz, bzz. Can't believe that Shen Yi was here. But Team Liquid, they were definitely hovering, trying to look for opportunities, but Shen Yi and Takeover.
Takeover is pretty slippery, though. That's the one difficult thing about a LeBlanc, especially for someone like a Wukong or a Nasus, is actually getting close to the LeBlanc. You're more looking to see if you can have a great setup from someone else, so you can jump over, get the Cyclone off, and make sure that Takeover cannot get the distortion out.
Yeah. Ooh, Bradley very close to one-shotting melee minions. That'll be a huge breakpoint for his ability to actually like push these lanes. But remember, Alex, we are a minute 15 away from the Mountain Dragon. The Mountain Soul is on the table for Team Liquid, and normally I think like the Mountain Soul itself, the shield it gives, not super exciting. But this is a game where Team Liquid, they now have people that they can play around. And if Yawn gets the extra shield as well as the extra resistances, that shield is probably going to be the difference maker in whether or not Takeover can kill him.
It also is the fact that resistances are resistances, and a soul is a soul. It might not be the most impactful or the most exciting one, but it makes it so you can survive more situations like that in the future, but you just couldn't because how much damage LeBlanc does.
And Yawn stepping too far forward, right? Spring Yawn does not die there, but Summer Yawn goes for that, and it's a brutal time to die. He's not going to be there in time for the upcoming Dragon. He's not there to try and contest this Baron, and Team Liquid, right when they need to have everybody playing in their right spots, Yawn dies.
Looking to take over too. He's looking to see if he can find Armeo, but Bradley's on the flank, trying to see if he can get inside the pit as well. Armeo chasing down Takeover right towards Bradley. Distortion over the wall. 50% on the Baron, but here comes the call of the Forge God going wide, not connecting onto Ayla, but they do not relent this pressure onto the Baron. They're still looking to see if they can take this, and they jump onto Bradley on the other side, but he uses his ult trying to get away, and that's going to be a 5-man hostile takeover from Ayla as Solo gets dragged back in, but he's getting all the attention from Team Liquid. Same with Bradley. The top top laners are both gone from both sides, but the fact that this fight was all based off Yon dying earlier, this is coming out TSM favored.
Yeah, but Team Liquid, they now have control over the actual play around the dragon. They can walk right on over to it, and Instinct has to be a little bit careful. He can hop over walls, but Team Liquid with positioning after the fight. Even though they wish they hadn't given over those 2 kills, even though the game is dragged out a little bit longer, Team Liquid now have the tools to try and match some of the scaling. They are in a position where they can try and use this, and Yon will hopefully not die next time Takeover jumps on it. No!
Hyper!
No! Team Liquid! Team Liquid!
Hyper! Nobody was there to back up Yon. Of course Hyper's gonna steal it.
I'm hanging my head right now. Team Liquid had done almost everything correct up until this point. Yeah, Yon got caught. Yeah, Bradley might have been a little bit too aggressive, but they were poised in a position to win this game, and not bringing Armeo over to the Dragon while Hyper's alive, I think it actually causes them to lose, right? Like, they are no longer favored from this position.
Well, look at the items. We're getting those second items completed for the side of TSM. The Phantom Dancer was the option for Instinct. The Void Staff with the needlessly large rod, even getting Dead Man's Plate for Hyper so he can get into the backline easier.
Yeah. It's crazy to me, right? We've been talking so much about how Armeo is this wall. He controls the enemy jungler. But you know, when the world needed him most, he vanished. He was clearing wards around the Baron Pit. And Hyper just walks on over. He says, I don't think they have everybody doing this, and he's right. But Yon, man, does a lot of damage. It's not over. It sounds like kind of doom and gloom from what I've been saying. Yes, TSM I think are favored from this position, but Team Liquid, they've won from positions where they are not favored. They have taken things back from the brink, and as long as they aren't going down in situations like this, and the game continues, we know that they have enough clutch factor to actually win these fights.
Team Liquid, still there, still strong in the mid lane, even if they took some poke. They've got the side lane set up. You can see that Bradley was pushing in a mini wave on the top lane, all the while Airy doing the same thing in bot lane, but this one being completely uncontested by TSM. So a bit more gold will be picked up by Team Liquid. They have even more of a likelihood to win the fights, even in a position where we see that TSM should be a little bit stronger underneath the turret. Hyper will be pulled back in by the handshake, but Aelin took way too much damage initially.
Yeah, and this is another win condition we haven't talked about as Bradley is wailing away.
But that crescendo nearly was able to get the kill onto Bradley, who goes back in, but he's taking damage. Gotta be careful, Takeover. He could look for the assassination even in the middle.
Wait, what? The bouncing
Excuse
blade!
me?
The W! I think that has to be what it was, right? We need a replay on that. The fact that Shen Yi goes down there is absolutely crazy. But that's another opportunity, right? Even though Bradley, he's a little bit past his prime right now. Level 14, he has to start putting points into abilities he's not as excited about. Typically, this is the Wither. It's like, okay, well, you know, it's a 40% slow to a 90% slow. Woo, the difference is already past the point where you're getting past the fall off. But now, TSM, they have to still figure out how they're going to be dealing with the split push. Soul will be in a position where he can at least hold a lot of these waves. He can at least take duels underneath his own turret. All right, but we got a replay.
Okay, let's watch this. I gotta watch this.
I think it's a W. I think it's Sivir W.
I thought we were both being quiet because we're just so...
We just have to find out, right? Because, like, nobody else dies here, but it's, like, absolutely crazy. Okay, they're hitting each other. They're hitting each other.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, the W. It bounces between everybody. Bounces off a minion. This kills him. Oh, he gets hit by two of them.
Oh, my goodness. He took a Q to the face. I got him low enough in the first place. But the double E... Oh, wow. I mean, double W. That's what it is, right? Yeah.
Yeah, double W. All right, Jan, I see you. I want to give you credit for that, even though I know it's a mistake on Shen Yi's part, but getting the kill is still pretty hype, and now we get another chance for Team Liquid to redeem themselves. Jan got caught around this time last time, right before the previous Dragon. Now, they can't make the same mistake. They're playing the 1-3-1, and TSM trying to find an engage.
It'd be a little bit harder for them to find that engage on Jan. He's got 4 items completed.
Keep going, Bradley.
Bradley can continue to split push. They have a lot more safety in these items, in the itemization they've gone for. And I want to bring the attention back to Jan. because Jan with 4 items completed, and the Maw of Malmortius being one of those items. Before, he was blown up by Takeover Instinct combo. This time, it's not going to be quite as easy to make sure you can annihilate this Sivir as quickly as you did previously.
Yeah. And the other important thing to kind of pay attention to, right, while we're looking at items, is nobody has built up a lot of previous wounds yet. Ayla is the only person who's going to be able to deal with the Sona healing, as Jan.
Okay, Armeo went a bit far. The flash in onto Jan. He's the target. No longer having the Maw either. Bailout won't be in time, but Bradley will be here in the back line looking to see if he can chomp down, getting a double kill for Harry. Lots of damage onto Soul, focusing him out. There's Instinct getting a little bit of damage from the sideline. Shenyi is going to be the target coming in from Harry. Diving back in.
+6.
Gets a +6 for Nasus, as it's only Instinct now against the World. Soul is on the other side, but he doesn't want to join
There's
into
the
this.
Wither.
And there's that Wither effect onto Zeri, forcing the flash out. Still getting a lot of damage coming through. Soul now trying to protect 2v4. Instinct getting damage onto Bradley. That's not going to connect. No root on Instinct. Now Harry's playing with fire. Even if he's getting a lot of damage onto Soul, he's got to be careful because Instinct's looking to ingress into the back line. They've got Soul. He's still low, but he's still alive. Instinct.
Instinct's ult is gone. He has timed it out, and now Team Liquid trying to find their way onto him. The dragon is still available, and Instinct backing away. Do they know where he is?
They should know where he is. Maybe they don't. Maybe he's going to be able to get out of there scot-free, but the Soul will be the cost of his escape.
But once again, Jan a little bit too far forward, getting caught at the worst time. It takes a Herculean effort from the rest of Team Liquid to overcome. And Jan, I mean, he does a lot of damage. Even with the bailout coming through, he almost got himself back alive just trying to return damage onto Soul and Hyper. So, Team Liquid, now that they have this, they are still scaling into this game. Bradley will have threats against the rest of the base pretty soon, right? He is strong enough now that he will start taking down these turrets, but he's no longer a significant team fighting threat. He's no longer going to be able to wade into the members of TSM, and TSM, the death ball is online, but they need to bring all the pieces together.
Well, the thing for TSM that I think is a big contributing factor to why this is going to be much more difficult for Team Liquid is the fact they're getting the ornaments passed out. Already have the Luden Tempest for the side of Takeover, already getting that completed, as well as, I forget what the Kraken Slayer upgrade is, but they got a lot more stats than it seems like on the surface.
Takeover.
They just gotta make sure they're not getting someone like Takeover caught out. The Crescendo was able to line up 2 members, but now Soul is in the middle. Shen Yi gets focused up. He's got shields. They've lost Takeover. No more Assassin on the side of TSM, but they got the knockup coming in from Soul, trying to fight back. Instinct's looking to see if he can rumble, but unfortunately, it is going to be Soul who's taken out of the rumble himself with only Instinct alive. The Wither from Bradley, the ace clean from Team Liquid Honda.
And it's Team Liquid who build the death ball before TSM. TSM, they don't have their pieces together. Takeover gets caught out. The LeBlanc gets stapled onto the other 4 members. Ends up being the downfall in this game. Team Liquid, it looked really doomed for a little while, but they were on the brink, and this team has the discipline. They have the macro. They will catch you out. And Team Liquid, despite a tough game, one of the longest ones they played so far this split, they are still going to take down TSM.
With a victory here, looking at how they played as well, Harry getting himself a 24 stack match ice at the very end of it all. This was TSM's to lose. They had those advantages from the get-go, the 1 item spikes that we expected, but that team fight is not what we expected. They were able to find great flanks and catch out Takeover to win it afterwards.
Yeah, Team Liquid, once again, we see why these are the top team. This is the Proving Grounds champions. These are the players who we should be looking at will be going to LCS in 2023, right? A lot of these players are ready to make their transition. And even in a situation where they have to play on the knife's edge, they have to make some risks happen. Not all of them went their way, but they continued doing it. They find people out, and they prevent TSM's composition from coming together.
So I did hear just now from production that Nasus had 700 something odd stacks, which is, I mean, I think that's a good amount.
He caught up. He got to the point where he needed to be, right?
Right, and even otherwise, he was still just a good front line for the team. Most of the damage was still coming from Harry, from Jan, even Armeo, on how he was able to find those flakes. The Wither was mostly there for Instinct to make sure Instinct wasn't getting a lot of damage in the fight.
Yeah, but we didn't even see it, right? That interaction only happened like once or twice. It was mostly just Nasus. He excels in team fights where he can just run down and hit 1 person at a time. He's not a great frontline tank, but when you don't have a front to back, when the death ball never coalesces, Nasus is fantastic.
And that is how it worked out for Team Liquid Honda. They were able to find the team fight that was a little unorthodox, catching out members of TSM and claiming victory. In this first game of the best of 2, we're going to toss it to a break. When we come back, we'll have our host back with our halftime show. Make sure you stay tuned.